Okay, welcome everyone. This is one of our first recordings for the Dharma Gates podcast. We're very glad and honored to have Joan Amaral Roshi with us today. As an introduction of us, we're a nonprofit devoted to exposing young people and really people of all ages to a variety of Buddhist teachers and encouraging them to enter into intensive training if they feel called to do that. And offering a wide variety of resources and information about the Buddhist world out there. So without further ado, this is Joan Amaral. Joan was Joan was one of those legendary monks at Tassajara that I feel like I always heard these little glimmering stories of, of the beauty and sincerity of her practice. So it's wonderful to get to speak with her today. We have a little slideshow prepared to kind of give you, our viewers, a insight into what training is like. So would you like to say anything about yourself before we begin?
No, let's go for it. Let's show some pictures.
Okay.
Okay, so shall I just go for it?
Mm-hmm.
These are, when I see these pictures, I am filled with it's just a strong and deep and warm feeling. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but here I am on the North Shore of Boston. I'm on the East Coast and I'm looking at pictures from the West Coast. So here's where I will get Portuguese and start to go all over the place. So as I said, Laura, please reel me in. But I am originally from the East Coast and I moved out west to San Francisco in 1992 because of dance. I was dancing in San Francisco. I was a modern dancer choreographer and I landed a job at a theater called Life on the Water Theater in 1992. And so I was dropped right into the performance scene. And then I came back east in 2012, not only to establish this practice place here, the Zen Center North Shore, but because my dad needed help. He was in the final 3 years of his life. And so I still have this feeling in my chest of, the West Coast and San Francisco in particular, and San Francisco Zen Center. So this first picture you see, it's the corner of Page and Laguna, and there's Suzuki Roshi. That's not me, that's Suzuki Roshi. And that's sometime in the 60s, or maybe 1970. He died in 1971, but that's the original. It's the San Francisco Zen Center building, City Center at 300 Page Street, and that's where I began training. I entered the front door there. You can see the little white pillars off to the left on a rainy Saturday in January of 1998, it would have been. And that's a building that was designed by Julia Morgan, this wonderful woman architect. Okay, and then on the right there is the Buddha Hall, the Venerable Buddha Hall, which is the ceremonial space of San Francisco Zen Center, the urban practice place city center. So you can see right outside those windows, you'll see that's right the corner of Page and Laguna. I remember that's where you have like morning service, the chanting, the bowing, where the Dharma talks happen, where various ceremonies happen. That's the room in which I received priest ordination in 2004. And I just remember on Saturday mornings during the Dharma talk, consistently, there was a Harley Davidson shop just down the street. And you can sort of see in this first picture, that's on top, sort of, there's a hill, it's a hill, it keeps going up a little bit. And so the motorcycles would come up Page Street to the corner of Laguna, and there's a stop sign there, and they'd have to stop, and then they'd rev to keep going up Page. And so that was just part of the experience of receiving the Dharma at San Francisco Zen Center. And so, when I look at the Buddha Hall, I am smelling the tatami. I am seeing those beautiful statues. You can't see it in this picture, but there's a statue of Tara, female Buddha, in undeniably female form. And I remember very well bowing and really feeling her presence while I'm offering full bows in that room. So the smells, the sights, we'd all be wearing robes, full robes in there. The candle, the sound of the bells, that's the big bell you can see across the way there. So my whole sense body is just filled with that the experience of Zen practice and Zen training when I look at this picture. Thank you for finding it, Laura. Okay, and then here we have, this is amazing. I'm probably gonna cry. This is also the Portuguese side of me. And so, and I love to cry, by the way. This courtyard is such an important place, the way Julia Morgan designed this building. So this courtyard, it's a cloister. It's kind of, you have a protected feeling. You can be in contact with the natural world, as you can see. The gardeners over the years have, planted trees and taken care of the plants. And there are the koi, the fish in that central fountain. So you could be connected with the natural world, have the sky above, but still have a protected feeling of sanctuary and refuge. And this courtyard for me was such an important part of the beginning of my practice. I didn't realize until much later that I'm actually an introvert, and that, the Saturday morning program at San Francisco Zen Center is a very public program. The public, that's when the public comes in. You can have hundreds of people there, and it can be overwhelming. Yeah. And so I found the courtyard to be a refuge to go to before morning zazen. When there was a lot going on in the dining room or even in the Buddha hall, I might be in the courtyard. I would do stretches before morning zazen. And, this is kind of goofy, but I would call this the courtship yard. There's that period after many couples met at San Francisco Zen Center, and I think it's wonderful and totally wholesome. I remember after the Dharma talk on Saturday mornings, it was after the talk would come out of the Buddha hall and there would be cookies and tea. and people would take a cookie and take a cup of tea and then come out to the courtyard, and I could hear them because I didn't go to the courtyard at that time. I would go downstairs to the library reading room and I would sit in a stuffed chair there and read Dogen, but I could still hear all the sounds of the community talking and socializing. And so for me, I could be connected with that without having to be kind of in the midst of it. And so I think about the practice place, the physical practice place of San Francisco Zen Center, and how nourishing that is and how many stories it holds. On the right there, you have Suzuki Roshi again, the founder of the San Francisco Zen Center, a seminal figure in American Zen. He's there with a statue that I'm not familiar with. That's not there anymore, unless it's overgrown by shrubbery. Maybe it is, I don't know. And he's standing next to it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, that is, I don't know if that's the window into the dining room or the window into the courtyard.
It looks like the dining room to me.
Look like yeah.
Do you think so? I'm not sure actually. I never practiced at City Center, but I just wonder, Joan, like when you first entered the San Francisco Zen Center City Center building, what was your feeling? Did you feel a resonance with the forms and the black robes and the ceremonies or the zazen, or
I love
what
to
was
talk
your
about
initial impression?
I love to talk about this because that first moment when a human being makes contact with formal practice is such a deep blessing. And so it is such an honor. And I say this kind of laughing inside because it could really be an inconvenience. If you lived in the building and the doorbell rang and you were closest to the door, you were expected to open it, even if it was Sunday morning and you're off. But it is such a deep honor to be the one to open the door to someone who is making contact with formal practice for the first time. I remember very, very vividly, Laura, the experience I had, the inner experience I had when I arrived for zazen instruction that Saturday morning. The door opened, I walked in, and I felt this resounding yes. I was dancing, I was doing choreography. So when I walked in, I saw all this stuff as wonderful production values. Like, this is cool. This is like great theater. It just captivated me. My imagination was just completely hooked. And so that's how I connected with ritual from the very beginning. It extricated me out of my mundane anguish of trying to make rent, of being confused around my sexual relationships. I was in my, I was 30 by then. But I remember just feeling overwhelmed by life and feeling that I cannot maintain, something needs to shift. And so this was all the setup for religious practice for me. I didn't come to San Francisco Zen Center to become a nun. No, when I think about that word, it doesn't really speak to me personally. For me, Zen is totally sexy. And meaning there's an alive quality to it. And I think nuns can be totally sexy too, but I mean actively taking up the practice of sex. I don't know why I'm talking about all this right now. I invariably will go off. People who've known me for the last 20 years, yes, I'm still talking about sex. Just because, especially when I think about San Francisco Zen Center, I will say the pronoun we, the San Francisco Zen Center Mahasangha, those of us who've gone through training there, are still working out how to take up actively the Dharma of sexuality. And so I've been talking about the senses, how my senses were filled with the smell of tatami and the sound of the bell. This is about the body. And we, as human beings, one of the foundational activities, and I would say practices of a human being, is sex. So yes, this was all in my mind when I walked through the door. I just had this whole body sense of, this is the rest of my life. What's happening here, and it extends beyond those four walls, but what is happening here is enough to fill me for the rest of my life.
Right. I just to return to the sexiness of it for a moment, I feel like it's a way also of speaking about a practice that could feel really inhibiting or really deadening, in a way, like sit like a rock, don't move at all, don't have any feelings. Sometimes you kind of get this, it seems like a little mistaken view of Zen, right? But to say actually the stillness is to hold the overabundance of life. It's like a deep expression of liveliness, and the forms aren't to restrict people, but to try to, I mean, maybe I'll ask you. What?
Love it. I was with you.
Yeah, but I feel like for me, in my own practice, that sense of liveliness is really remaining in contact with it has been essential. So.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what's recently on my mind too is last night, Shokuchi Kerrigan, who's a dear friend. She and I trained together through San Francisco Zen Center. I've invited her to come to offer teachings. And so she's done a few class series now that are always embodied. She also trained as a dancer and as a yoga teacher and a yoga practitioner. And so I feel this is such a beautiful opportunity to disabuse ourselves of the notion that Zen is intellectual. I do feel like we have gotten stuck here in Zen because of the koans, and it has been pretty masculine. And I get into that masculine quality, the way we chant and the way Shashu is very masculine. I love that. One of the pictures coming up is me with that truck. We'll get to it. But that doesn't mean it's rational and that it's intellectual. So I really feel the work that Shokuchi's doing, and that I've been exploring pretty much since the beginning of Zen practice, has been how to come back into the body, the wisdom of the body's point of view, trusting that. And so, yes, so so the forms also in terms of morality and ethics, the precepts and the forms, I really love that question. Are you disciplined enough to be free? The relationship between discipline and freedom, between precepts and relaxation, like the full moon ceremony that we offer every month, which is a return to the precepts, to ethical conduct, for me, is about realigning with our basic wish to be happy, peaceful, and free. And so it's an expression of morality from the inside out. I was raised as a Catholic, and I think about like the 10 commandments, and I think about the 10 precepts, and I think about the difference between thou shalt not kill and I vow not to kill. This is an expression of a wish to be happy, peaceful, and free that is coming from within and radiating out. And I do not mean to disparage the Catholic Church. In fact, I think the multi-faith work that we do is mutually illuminating. And that's why I'm so devoted to it, because there's nothing to reject. There's just a lot to clarify.
Well, I want to, I would love to hear so much more about all this, but I realize right now our screen is full of these images. So maybe we'll keep moving and then we'll return.
Perfect.
We'll back,
Perfect.
as
Perfect.
they say.
There she is.
Teacher.
Yes, Zenkei Blanche Hartman, the grande dame of American Zen. So she was the abbess when I first started practice. And then soon after, Linda Ruth Cutts became the co-abbess. So there were two abbesses. And so I was like, Buddhism is patriarchal? What? But since then, I have seen, and I talk about this all the time, how, yes, we are still within patriarchal mindset. And Blanche herself worked very hard, especially toward the end of her life, to settle with the fact still that she had been born a girl. She was very masculine in many ways, and spoke openly about how she was very competitive, and how she measured herself against the other male practitioners who were in positions of power. So Blanche, there's so much I could say about Blanche, but so that was later on in her life, probably within the last, certainly 5 to 10 years of her life. I see her robe there. I think of her as a sewing teacher, how she maintained that tradition. I see her mudra, the cosmic mudra. Yes, exactly, Laura, how open her mudra was. And that little smile she had on her face, her foundational practice toward the end was overridingly metta, loving kindness, opening. And there she is with her husband. I love that you found this. This is on my personal altar here. It's one of my favorites. I think Ren Bunce took this picture. It's the playfulness of Lou and Blanche. Blanche and Lou Hartman, married for 64 years. He died in 2011. And that was at the end of my first practice period, actually, at Tassajara. That's on the front lawn there. So that's Lou, maybe doing his Bodhidharma impersonation, holding Blanche's hair whisk.
Do you remember, just because so many people have the question of how to find a teacher or how to know if someone's your teacher, could you say a little bit about how you first got the sense that you might want to work with her, or what your initial impression was?
Yeah, she wasn't my first official teacher. She was my teacher from the beginning, but as was Paul Haller, Mel Weitzman, Reb Anderson, Linda Ruth Cutts. These were all people who were abbots and were leading Tassajara practice periods. And I was a monk training in 13 Ango, 13 monastic training periods. I was there for a little over 6 years. But Darlene Cohen was my root teacher. And that was I first received the precepts with Darlene. And then there's a whole story. This might be a second episode. Because I think it may be a little bit too much for now, but what I would say about Darlene and about your question, Laura, is that I don't really know. And I remember at the time not really knowing how this happens. It's just that there was something about Darlene, and she had rheumatoid arthritis. She was very crippled. She moved you could tell it was debilitating for her. And I was still dancing at the time, and you would wonder why. Well, it was because it was all about the body. Darlene really
Wow.
understood the body. And that's her phrase, wisdom experiencing from the body's point of view. But
Darlene is another. Oh.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Darlene.
Oh, Darlene is another one of those figures that I feel like I always heard stories of at Tassajara. You know, there would always be this, beautiful recollection of her.
Yes.
And also to point out, this is one of the interesting aspects of San Francisco Zen Center, that there are like 15 like highly trained teachers kind of roaming around all the time, either at City Center and Green Gulch, and then coming to Tassajara for practice periods or during the summer. So yeah, it's an
what I'll say about Darlene is Darlene was so helpful for San Francisco Zen Center institutionally. She was like the oh my gosh, like the court jester. I've never thought of that before. She kind of kept them upright, I feel, through her sense of humor and her wickedness. I don't know how many times I heard Blanche say to Darlene, this time you've gone too far. With her sense of humor and her leopard print rockasoos and so much else. But Blanche really loved and respected Darlene and saw her deep devotion to the Dharma. With regard to me and Darlene, there was an issue, and I do want to bring this up, that Darlene did not train monastically in an extended way at Tassajara, and that was a gap for me. Trained in dance the way I did, I value traditional classical training, and I felt that that's what I would receive through Blanche. So there was quite a bit of pain there with that relationship as a result of that. But Blanche was very, very classically, traditionally trained. And, and I will say that I know of myself, I've been called a maverick. I've been called an iconoclast. I've been called out there by the San Francisco Zen Center establishment. And I talk about this all the time. I didn't mean to. It's just, I'm Mediterranean. I was a dancer. I'm Joan, whatever else, So I knew there was something in me that knew, because of my temperament, because I didn't come as a nun. I didn't come as a person who was going to try to fit in. I wanted the training, and I did follow the schedule completely. And I deeply love the triple treasure and respect and have confidence and faith in it. And the institution, any institution, I balk and I question and I have great doubt. And maybe this is why I get along so well with teenagers. I'm such a rebel. And so because of this part of me, I knew that politically, and this is Darlene speaking, I would need Blanche on my side as my advocate if I were going to be seen, if I were going to pursue Zen training to the extent of ordination and being a Dharma lineage holder in the lineage of Suzuki Roshi.
It's such an interesting question of, like, how do you be a part of an organization, an institution that is in a certain way trying to preserve itself, trying not to rock the boat too many ways, and also like find your own true expression, which it feels like Zen is really about, right? I mean, and the balance between that creativity and then also the kind of harmonizing form or something, the dissolving like milk and water, but also allowing people to really express themselves truly and fully. I feel like some people would take it as a very high compliment that you would be considered a rogue by San Francisco Zen Center, it might be,
I only heard a few people say that, and I have to admit I was flattered, but a little bit aghast, because it's intense and it's scary, and this is the racial justice work. It is intense to be one person so different from others. That was my experience the whole time in my training. Was how different I was, how different I expressed myself. And I still am white. But you know, the people I was closest to, when I look back on that time, there was at least one and possibly two people of color, the very few people at the time that I was there from 2000 to 2006, who I felt closest with. And to this day, the people who I feel understand me the most are people of color. But that is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, you know. But it does connect with that. We never use the word healing the whole time I trained in Zen at San Francisco Zen Center, and that's okay. I think they're starting to use that word more. But I do feel that in the work of racial justice and in the process of sitting on a cushion, you know, the process of awakening, the process of justice work, the process of ending white supremacy, the process of upholding and preserving democracy. All of this for me is connected with my own personal path of healing. So I have no regrets. I mean, I knew I didn't want to leave Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, bitter and resentful. That kind of stuff does arise because San Francisco Zen Center is a place where you can get a lot of strokes if you line up in a certain way.
Right.
So, you know, that little part of me is like, oh, but I just knew at a certain point it was going to be time to go. And I do think there are two different creatures here. One is the creature who stays within the empire and maintains the continuity. That's important. And if you're cut out for that, do that. Right. But many of us aren't. And so I feel like part of what I'm working with too, with the diaspora of all the graduates, or, you know, to see ourselves as graduates or as, I don't know, something that's not like associated with failure or rejects, you know, or in exile somehow, you know, out in the hinterland, to really own that quality of being more of a, you know, working the frontier as opposed to working the home base, because both are equally valuable. And I see that the paradigm is shifting the more we go, the more affiliated sanghas there are, that we have to just take that mantle up and be confident. It's both finding our own way and expressing ourselves without making it up, you know, as we say, without making up standards of our own, you know, to be couched in the tradition without being held hostage by it.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think I feel like I've asked myself that question many times, and so many of my friends from San Francisco Zen Center, always asking it, but you just put it so aptly. I'm noticing, I feel like the discussion is too wonderful. Let's move to the next photo, and we can keep.
Oh yes! Oh gosh! Look at that! The beautiful Tassajara Zendo. The lighting of this. Who took this photo? Whoever you are, beautiful. That really encapsulates so much. You know, this was supposed to be a temporary Zendo after one of the fires at Tassajara. It was built by Paul Disco, and you know, it's still around decades later. I think that happened in the 70s. So that was the Zendo where I trained monastically in the mountains of Big Sur, California. So this creaky wooden floor, I feel that on my bare feet doing Kinhin, walking meditation. The smell of those, there's just a particular smell of all that incense over the years. So there's the main altar, there's the Makugyo right there, there's the big bell, the the orchestra section of a Zen temple, how important the sounds are, especially in that mountain valley, right? To call people to the Zendo, to notify people when someone's died. If you start hearing the Densho ring and it keeps ringing, you know, in the middle of the day, you know, and then you wonder, okay, who has died? And then you go to the Zendo and you offer the incense and you offer the bows and you begin the process of holding that magnitude.
Just to pop in for a moment, but just such an incredible experience to practice and play the instruments for the ceremonies. I got to be on the Doan Ryo and the Myozen Joan And
Yeah.
it's such a rich practice in so many ways, like certainly a body practice, certainly a listening practice, but also like an embarrassment practice, like how do you metabolize when you clack the clackers at the wrong time during meal chants, like 4 times in one meal or something, or you hit the bell at the wrong time or you miss it, and everyone's so accustomed to it that they notice. So I see this image and I just feel all of the intense memories of playing that bell and the makuyo, and how you really live in the Zendo during sesshin, how it really becomes your home.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Laura. Absolutely. That practice of embarrassment, the practice of dropping the self, the process, the practice of letting go, as we say, the process of letting be. But let me share one moment that's actually coming up. When I was Kokyo, when I was leading the chanting, I mean, for morning service before breakfast, and so there I am right there. And people who were sitting near me when I was Kokyo would talk, they'd be like, whoa, there were all these waves coming off me. I mean, I'm very intense. And when I'm chanting, it's very intense. Like, and I always feel like if I'm going to have a heart attack, it's going to be when I'm Kokyo, for the full moon ceremony in particular.
Oh, of course.
Just take the body over, like, and it's such a powerful experience. I can't even explain it. And I remember early on, after one morning practice, walking all the way back around through all my Dharma peers back to my seat for breakfast, and feeling like it was the walk of shame. I was so embarrassed by the vulnerability of it, and my voice was quivering, or I don't even remember what exactly was happening, until I realized how much ego that is, how much self-absorption that is. And when I talk about ego, I don't talk about it as a bad thing to get rid of. It is, I was talking about this with someone earlier today. It's a relationship to engage with, do I let this ego be the bully and just take over, or can I actually have a conversation with it? But it was so helpful and refreshing, because what I realized in that moment as a choreographer, as a performer, is, oh, this is not a performance. It's not like I did a bad, that people should get their money back. This is not a performance. It's an offering. This is a ceremony. Whatever it was, I've trained for this. I've been practicing. It's not like I was frivolous about it. What it sounded like and felt like was exactly perfect. It's exactly what it was. And so that was revelatory for me. It was like this big, oh, that's what we're doing here. And furthermore, after all those years, all those periods of hearing various kokyos, the one who was the most memorable for me, the most moving, was Judith Keenan, bless her heart, who's the photographer of this next picture here. Do you know her? She's she's a carpenter.
In 2012.
Okay, yeah. I remember she was Kokyo. When I was Ino, I invited her to be the Kokyo for the full moon ceremony during a work period. She felt so honored by that. But it was because I had heard her be Kokyo before. It was during work period, I think. And she made a mistake as she was introducing the chant. I don't remember the exact specifics of what she was introducing, but it sounded something like this. She had the chant book in front of her. She said, heart of, whoops, turn the page. Harmony up, whoops. It happened like 2 or 3 times. And she was so unself-conscious about it. It was so, I could still hear that as just part of the sound of her particular offering. That I was really touched by the lack of self-consciousness, and also the wholeheartedness of being just completely there and being willing to be completely seen. So Judith is the photographer of this picture here, which, Laura, I love the counterpoint, and this is very dear to my heart. the counterpoint of the formality of our practice of that Zendo, that gorgeous, pretty traditional Japanese Zendo. And then this young monk, I was newly ordained, and I was a monk because I was practicing monastically in a monastery. And I was also a priest, a new priest. And I was just ordained. And I remember Judith, I think she saw, we use that word radiant a lot. I was just really happy. And I was filled with a sense of goodness for being ordained. And people could see it. And you can see it in this picture.
You can see it. Yeah.
I will be
loving.
infinitely grateful to Judith for this picture. And I'm going to just say, this is the picture I want at my funeral. It's not just because I'm so happy. This is a very happy human being. It's because of this light playfulness that I personally feel, and maybe it's especially as a woman, is really, it's like Suzuki Roshi saying, what we're doing here is too important to take too seriously. What we're doing here is so important. Let's please not take it too seriously. So I had been a majorette in junior high school, and someone had a baton. And I remember doing a duet with Chris Rusev, who's gay, and he dressed up he had these long eyelashes and he wore fishnets. It was kind of and he and I did this baton duet to cumbia music for a skit night one summer. And I think it was around that time that there was still a baton in our midst. And Judith asked me if I would put my robes on and do that. And so there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, for me, it's just that quality of aliveness, of wholeheartedly being as an expression of Dharma in alignment with, with the precepts and with the teachings, but not restricted.
Yes. And Laura, I have to talk about hair because I love your hair. It was the first thing I noticed when we zoomed on. Hair is such a problem for me. And I loved being bald. I love being bald at Tassajara. Out here, for me personally, it's problematic. Yeah, especially in the Boston area, there are a lot of hospitals and people immediately think you're a cancer patient. If I were walking around wearing hipari all the time and of a certain demeanor, maybe it would make more sense, but it doesn't seem to make sense in my life. And so I have tried everything. I've even dyed my hair, but now I think what I'm going for is seasoned, mature trustworthiness with an edge. Like a little edgy, like a little unexpected, like I have this thing here, so that it's not too predictable. But it was just so much easier to be bald. And so I look back on that time, because people watching this, you may be wondering about the baldness. There is something for me being bald about being revealed, being vulnerable, being exposed, about, especially as a woman, I think it's a really beautiful experience to try on. I will also say, though, that Darlene was pretty adamant about women priests not being androgenized.
Interesting.
Not, and I feel, to not try to look and behave and sound like men, to be taken seriously as a priest. So I think there's a wide range, and I support all of it for manifesting as a woman priest.
Yeah, and there is so much, even implicitly, the pressure to kind of to androgenize yourself, or not to kind of, there's a way, it's so I thought about this so much. There's a way in which, like, for a woman to shave her head has this additional layer that male monastics will never even understand, right? Maybe they have some attachment to their hair, but it's not so much a part of the cultural identity of women, right? To have hair of some kind. And then the robes too are the same way. And and in a way it's freeing, to kind of step outside of the cultural images of what womanliness looks like and see, well, who is this being just totally fresh, as naked as one could be while clothed.
Yes.
But then also to not have that be a fragmentation, to find, again, to find a whole expression of yourself that includes being a woman if you are.
Yes.
I feel like we might have this problem of we get into wonderful conversation. I think we only have a few left, so.
Yeah, so this is just the work circle. Wow, where did you come up with this? This is so, and I'm even, this must have been my first practice period. That there's Blanche in the middle there. So that's at the base of where the birdhouse is, where I lived for several years. And this is, you enter into Tassajara, and then this is the work circle where we would all make a circle. It's the first time you would talk during the day. We would break the great silence. So it's after lunch. And we would come together and the work leader would assign tasks and we'd make announcements. So that's that. And then this one is, I remember that morning, it was a personal day at Tassajara in the monastery. On the personal day is when you wash your bowls, your oryogi bowls that you use to eat in the Zendo, and you would sew on. Sewing is a big part of this practice. You would sew on your new setsu tip. That's what you use to clean your bowls. And there is Jessie Weens and Gita Gayatri, who I think she now goes by Shundo or Shindo. She goes by Shindo, and I think she's in India. She's back in India the last I knew.
Yeah. And it's part of like all the little outside of the Zendo ceremonies, I was thinking about that, like washing your juban, doing your laundry, washing your oryoki cloths, sewing setsu tips. It's like, at least, for me, by the end, I felt like I had all these rituals that were just to take care of my life, that weren't formalized, but that kind of, had this ritual quality.
Yes, I love ritual. It's so respectful. Oh yeah, that must have been, so that was, that's in the courtyard at Tassajara. That must be during a tea break, during work time. I remember that mug. It was a cat with a crown. I loved that mug. And then I'm probably having some bread or peanut butter or something. And then this one to the right. So that's Isho Fujita. Oh, and there's Blanche. There's Blanche right there in the corner. Blanche used to, so this was the Gay Pride Parade. That was our float. It was a floating Zendo. And that's, you can just see Blanche. She would always be sitting zazen in the back of the truck. We had rented a 27-foot flatbed, and I do not know how I was the one asked to do this. Maybe people knew that it was my favorite job in the monastery, was driving trucks. I loved it. And I'm wearing my overalls. I've got my, I think that's a Craftsman, if I'm not mistaken, hat that I used to wear. And an Isho, I can't remember what we were talking about there, but that's Isho Fujita. And I was telling Laura that I actually parallel parked that monster in the financial district of San Francisco. We got down there and after I had parallel parked it, I didn't even realize there were all these people around who spontaneously burst into applause. Did I say 27-foot flatbed?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think I learned the full moon ceremony from a recording of Isho Fujita.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cool. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, we had MP3s of him.
He also, Laura, is doing wonderful work, somatic work of connecting zazen really actively with the body, doing body physical practices. Like I remember it was during that time that he would set up a slack line on Page Street in front of the building to teach people zazen. That the only way you're going to be able to stay on the slack line, if you're able to at all, is to relax into it and to go with the give of the line. If you tighten up, you're going to be tossed right off. And so that's how he was teaching zazen.
I think it was Jerry Ruchenbeiler too, who was talking for a while about the image of like the goat going along the rocky mountain, and there's just enough pathway for it to to go along, but not much. So that kind of sense of each step, each moment in zazen, having full attention, having full presence.
Yes.
The slack line too helps with that.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, so that's the Jukai picture. That's July 2000 in the city center courtyard. Wow. There's Darlene with a full head of hair, Paul Haller and Blanche, Michael Wenger. There's Tia Strozer. Yeah, there was a whole contingent from New Jersey. Yep, several of Darlene's students there. That's pretty sweet. I remember that day very well of receiving the precepts. You know, we sew these robes, the raksu, we sew them ourselves. And that's just an important practice to not just get the raksu. It's like it gets returned to you because you sew it yourself and then you hand it over to your teacher, and your teacher, in naming you, you know, I don't believe the teacher names the student. It's for sure a co-arising. The teacher's just kind of putting it down on the silk, picking up the calligraphy brush and putting it down on the silk. But it's already an expression of living in vow, of giving over to something. I remember feeling so frustrated at how long it took to sew the raksu. But it's with each stitch, namu kiebutsu, right? I plunge into Buddha. With the needle plunges into the fabric, I plunge into Buddha.
And then I'm just looking at my rakusu too, and then just all the I can remember when I did certain stitches, you know, like there's this little section of mine where they're very close together. It was doing sesshin, and I guess I just got too concentrated, you know, and it just got smaller and smaller. But
yeah, whole worlds are there, our whole life right there for us to see.
Okay, let's see. So here you're Zendo now in Massachusetts, right?
Yes, this is one version of our Zendo we've had. You know, I keep losing count. We had a haunted house in Old Town Marblehead. That was the first 6 months. And then we were in an Episcopal church. We had a dedicated space in the blueprint of the church. It's a cross. We were in the left arm of the cross. That was the Zendo. So you could see from the pews, you could see our zafus.
Wow.
Yep. And we had the Kuan Yin on the altar just underneath a beautiful statue of the Blessed Virgin. So it's kind of this echo of an archetype of this female healing energy, compassionate energy. So that was the second one. That was 2 years. And then this was the third one on Lovett Street when we moved to Beverly, 2 towns over from Marblehead. And that was a duplex. That was where we played with the model of my living there. And that lasted 3 years. Again, it's not really in my temperament, but it was good to practice with that. And we also had a guest room. So we had residential interns practice there. And that was really powerful. So this was the day of a Jukai. And the 2 students that day, Kevin Peng and Stephanie Majot. So this would have been, I think, the summer of 2017, I think. And then Maddie right there in the back, and then Kaya Jikan over there on the far end. He received the precepts a few years later, and he's now our Shuso, our head student. Yep.
I confess I chose this photo partly because I got to practice with Kevin at Tassajara, and it was just such a joy. It was such a dear friend. Yeah. That was really sweet to see.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So here's
Yes. Contemporary. Here we are in the last, this is all in the last year. That's such an interesting picture of me on the right. Farrah Wolfson, I think, took that. Okay, so on the left here. So this is my Dharma brother, Reverend Andre. A Dharma brother, I say. He's a Christian minister in the Baptist tradition. He is fiery in the pulpit. He's the youth minister at Zion Baptist Church in Lynn. And he is, I hope it's okay to say this, the Justice Democrats are definitely, they've got him on their radar. They want to see him run for office, and I could see it happening. He's powerful. He's my beloved. So he and I do stuff together. We have there's a whole leadership. I don't even know how to call it. We started calling it BIPOC leadership. That felt weird because they're like, we're Black. So then it was Black leadership, and now it's just leadership at the Zen Center. Andre is on the board of the Zen Center North Shore. He is part of the steering committee. It's a group of 6 or 7 people of color who guide the racial justice work, the justice and equity work at the Zen Center. Awa is another member of that. She's our first official hire. We received this gift from this family, a very generous gift. And so now we're able to pay people. And Awa, who's part of the steering committee, she's originally from Senegal. She speaks English, Spanish, French, as well as, is it Swahili? Senegalese? Actually, I'm not even sure what her native language is before French. Yeah, I need to find that out. But anyway, she's an incredible person. Lives right here in Beverly, and we don't know what the title is yet, but it's my assist, like in the Zen language, guiding teacher assist, or executive assistant, we don't know yet, and equity programs coordinator. And I want to take a minute here to say, she and I are saying, I'm saying, well, I want to have the word race in it. Can't we say racial justice and equity coordinator? And she's like, and I can't quite explain exactly what it is, but I'm for sure taking her lead on it. She's like, we don't want it just in that position. We have to have it all over the Zen Center website, because it's not segregated into this one area. It's our whole being. So we're growing into that. It's already happening. Wow. But it's a very deep and subtle and nuanced conversation that I am deeply valuing. And Awa is already, it's so interesting. She said to me that she is interested as a Black woman, not just practicing Zen, but training in Zen. So we're going to be exploring what this means. But at any rate, that's just a little bit of the flavor of the leadership at the Zen Center North Shore. And so Andre and I, we just do stuff together. Like with me and Esther, I talk about Esther a lot too. Esther tells me that together we need my white privilege and her Black experience. And it's a powerful combination. And that's what Reverend Andre and I do. And that's what this is. Just after, I believe this is like January 7th. It's after those events at the Capitol, the whatever we want to call it, the terrorist attack. The
that sounds accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, the gross expression of massive delusion. I don't even know. I don't even know how to talk about this, but we most of it I don't know, but we show up anyway. And then, I bring my bell and we just go from there. And then on the right, this was last summer. Reverend Andre and I and several others organized actions on the North Shore and Beverly in particular in response to George Floyd's murder. And so here we are with police officers outside the Middleton jail, where we were delivering a statement to the sheriff, Coppinger. And, it's interesting, my posture here, my stance, what am I expressing? I don't really know. I am leaning in, but I do feel like the Daruma doll, like I am not going anywhere. There's some flexibility, but I'm rooted. And as Esther and I will say, when we stormed the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi to get her husband out. Esther's originally Kenyan, and her husband, I'm happy to say, is here now. We kept saying to the embassy officials, look, we're determined. We are determined. And I feel like I can say that as a woman, smaller stature, you know, at least compared to Andre, and wearing, you know, a version of robes that people may or may not recognize. And also, like Esther likes to laugh that I said, okay, we're going to sit down and we're not going to move. We're going to sit down and meditate and we're not budging. So it's kind of threatening, but not threatening, hopefully, that they'll start pulling guns on you, things like that. So what I'm trying to say, I think, and this is a very important point for me, of the work of racial justice flowing from a Zen practice place, is this really vibrant inquiry into, first of all, what is going on here with white supremacy and racism? Why are we so stuck here? And secondly, what is the opportunity from the Zen tradition? I really feel, without sounding too much like a fundamentalist, I really do feel that we have something to offer from our classic, traditional, formal Zen training. I feel like we have something to offer. It's just going to be a creative endeavor, you know, in addition to upaya, skillful means, how we do this conversation, how we do this work. So I think that for me is what's happening here in this picture. Thank you for selecting this one.
Yeah, and I feel like you're one of those figures that's really at the forefront. I really, when I hear your name, it's always kind of like, yeah, kind of right at the forefront of really trying to embody and put to beneficial service your formal Zen practice, you know, and working really closely with these systemic problems of racism. So yeah, I was so inspired to see these photos and to see, you know, Buddhist teachers in their robes and with other faith leaders,
yes,
you know, kind of joining together and saying, yeah, we have something that we can offer. You know, our religious practice isn't just to like sit quietly, although that's a big part of it, but it's also something that we can express. And I love your posture in the second photo. I think, yeah, that just seems rooted, but really like you're there, you know, and you're not going to back down.
Interesting.
That's what I read in it. But, and then we have one more.
I love this shot. It's kind of embarrassing. I love the power. This actually reminds me of Blanche. It's just right here. Excuse me for stepping to the side. When I see this picture, I think about Blanche. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. I have my hide screen. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Blanche has a quality in this picture that I kind of see in me there. And I hope this is not chest thumping. It's just what I'm pointing to is like what gets passed down or what is shared, teacher to student, this warm hand to warm hand transmission. Blanche was deeply committed to racial justice. She's holding her kotsu and her she's got her fist there, and it's a very, quote, masculine stance, which I love. And I am a woman priest, and I love this masculine aspect. It's not at odds with being a woman priest. I'm going to own that. And so there is something here, because I work with this around presence, taking your place, having this kind of confidence. So this is an Extinction Rebellion action. They are awesome. They just know how to do it. Karen Myers, who's a beautiful Buddhist practitioner. She's right behind me there. She's got the hair coming across her, it was her veil. She was wearing a veil coming across her face a little bit. She was the mastermind behind this. And she is Karen Myers, remember her name, you can see her, she's very active. She comes out of, I believe, the Insight meditation tradition. So this was a funeral procession at Good Harbor Beach in Gloucester. This is a beautiful beach. It's like always voted the #1 beach, you know, in Massachusetts. And this was right in the middle of the summer. It was like a Sunday afternoon. The beach was packed. I'm wearing those sunglasses because it was so bright. And I'm wearing my full robe, or I'm not wearing the kesa, but I'm wearing the robe. And I don't know if you can see, but my kimono is soaking wet by the ocean. I was a little bit like, whoa, I've never done this before, but we were walking through the water and I was like, yeah, I'm going to just do this. This picture was taken by Lita Kelly, who's an amazing photographer. She's a Sangha member here at the Zen Center North Shore, and you can see her work, Lita Kelly Photography. So this ritual, what Extinction Rebellion is masterful at is they want to move people. They don't want to talk at people. They don't want to shove compassion down people's throats. They want to just move people. Again, it's like the experience I had when I walked through the front door of San Francisco Zen Center. It's like, yeah, I want to be part of this. This is a cool way to live the rest of my life. And so that's the feeling I have with their actions. It's to get like that guy in the yellow bathing suit there, the yellow shorts, to get him to go, this is cool. I want to be part of this. I mean, it was intense because there were some people yelling things out at us. We didn't know how it was going to be. Some women were drawing their young children closer, like we were threatening, because it is kind of scary. We're all dressed in black. That's Sarah, who's also a member of the Sangha, next to me on the drum. So it was a very solemn procession, and I loved it, Laura. I loved it. It felt like the confluence of many threads of my life just coming together. I want more of this. It felt like back in the 60s, when they were talking about those happenings and stuff. Like, I feel with our world these days, our country, we're so individualized. And of course, this is pre-pandemic. But to have a big group of people come together to do something together. And there was form and there was ceremony around it, but there was also, Extinction Rebellion has a Buddhist kind of subgroup. It's called Extinction Rebellion Buddhists, I think. But this wasn't that. So not everybody there by any means is Buddhist or a meditator. But they asked me to bring my bell, and I did two things. I led the Jizo Durrani chanting. Do you know that?
No, I don't.
We never did that at San Francisco Zen Center. It's part of our regular social justice work here. We offer the Jizo Durrani for total accompaniment. I learned it at Grapevine Monastery, and it's just Om Ka Ka Kabisan Mae Soaka Om Ka Ka Kabisan Mae Soaka Om Ka Ka Kabisan Mae Soaka. That we go on. There's kind of an aboriginal quality to it that I noticed. It really kind of breaks through to people. So we were chanting that, and then we were also chanting the verse, Shantideva's verse from the Bodhicharya Vatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, the way of an awakening being. That's for as long as space endures and for as long as living beings remain, so too shall I abide to dispel the misery of the world. And, it sounds a little Christian. Shantideva sounds a little Christian, but what's so powerful about that is for us to know that we can take that up. We have the capacity within each one of us to take our place in the sacred, to take our place in that context of bringing forth justice and healing. We all have that power. And so singing that, and it's a song, it's this beautiful tune that's very lyrical, and I really enjoy doing that. I've done it for a couple of Extinction Rebellion things. It's just so connecting, and it actually touches the heart in a way that I don't always experience in the Zen tradition. So it's just nice to have that as another possible chanting option. So
Even here.
Boom.
Wow, I just even hear you speak about that, I feel so moved. I feel, and to hear you chant, really, and to see, as this photo just struck me immediately. And also, I guess I have a question of what it means to be a priest in the world,
Yeah.
Maybe
that's what it means. That's what it means right there, to have the opportunity, and there's so many priests. It's like It can go either way. I mean, priest could be like something people are embarrassed about because of all the scandals, and not just in the Catholic Church, as you know, in our own tradition.
Right.
So
Right.
I guess, there's a part of me that aspires to be a priestess.
Ah.
I feel like I got priest. I mean, I shouldn't be so cocky about this, but to be a priestess requires like a shamanistic kind of wisdom.
Right.
That's why Zenju Earthen Manual's work is, I'm so moved by the work that she's doing and just her point of view. So maybe
Well,
that's
yeah, we're hoping to have her on the podcast shortly too. So
yeah.
We'll be able to share her teachings. Okay, I think that there we are. We're back. Yeah, let's see, we're still recording. So I'm gonna
let me just, this thing, I didn't quite answer that, and it's fine, but being a priest, I think I would say, there is something about believing that there is sacredness, asserting sacredness in the world, the value, the beauty, the peace that can be found in sacredness, the healing that can be found in sacredness, and that, there are many ways to express that. Like one of my favorite people, like I love doulas, and various people who are exploring spirituality. But to be a Zen priest is, for me, what that means is to make a choice, to choose something specific, and to just stay right there, to fathom its unfathomability, and to also just let other people know where I am, and to make it really easy for them to find me.
Like a beacon. That's the image I decided. Yeah, a beacon of awakening and wholesomeness. I mean, there's so much. I feel like there were so many doors opened as we moved through that. Is there? I mean, maybe because as a female practitioner, it's something that's come up quite frequently. But yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about your path, as a woman training in Zen, and how you found an expression of that. Like, I mean, you've already covered a lot of it, but if there was anything else that you felt like,
yeah, well, thank you for this opportunity to try to maybe bring some of these different threads more consciously together, because I can be wide ranging, and I see now with the time we didn't talk about an ending time, and so here it is. Let me just say that I have a 5 o'clock that I need to get to, and so I have just a few more minutes.
Maybe I just realized with the time, I guess there's two questions that I feel like are really vital. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Just because I want everyone who watches these to have just some kind of sense of the different approaches. And they're kind of big questions, so forgive me, but like, what do you think awakening is, and then what is practice in light of that?
Oh my gosh, thank you. And wow, I'm like, oh boy, this is great. What is awakening? Well, so what's coming up right now, awakening, something about opening, something about truth telling, something about confidence, having the confidence to take my place so that I can be still enough and trust enough to open, and therefore, and be still enough to see what's here when I do open. So it's a beautiful question. Awakening for me is Buddha, the triple treasure, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. I translate, especially for people who are new or who are coming from a different faith tradition, as and we chant the Pali refuges at the end of the racial justice work. And so I say, when we're going to be chanting, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, we might understand that as honoring awakening to reality with each other. So, and it really is this, we are really in a place, I think, right now in our country or our community or in our lives, in this human life, where potentially we can really bring forth something powerful, some powerful spirit, some powerful energy in the world to resolve some of these seemingly intractable problems. So the four energies I'm very interested in are zazen, meditation, the process of awakening on the cushion, social justice, self-care or nourishment, healing, and creativity. Yeah, and how these might mutually inform and illuminate each other, so that awakening, like awakening, I mean, it can happen in any moment, but to have a through line, a sense of some kind of continuum, a sense of moving forward, I think it's very helpful to have some structure and some, I don't know, methodology might be a little bit too strong, but this is the why I keep asking that question. Are you disciplined enough to be free? And what I feel like the work is that we're doing on Monday nights with a racial justice group, because all of our schedule at the Zen Center is justice work. Every time I sit down on my cushion, I feel like it's justice work. But we have to find ways to make that explicit, not just for others, but for ourselves. Right. We have to talk about it so that we can cognize it, because otherwise we're operating too much on that plane of ultimate truth that's not helpful to, the teeming humanity around us. We need to bring it into the conventional realm. So
to integrate.
Yes, to integrate. Yes. Yeah, and I love connecting. I talk about this with our elected officials here in Beverly, the police chief, who's appointed, not elected, but the police chief, the mayor, the city councilors. I'm always talking about, because I'll have my bell with me all the time, and we'll do a little meditation, and I'll always connect the process of awakening through meditation with the process of awakening within the work of justice, because I feel it's very important. When some people will say that when you say social justice, you're automatically ruling out, you're excluding a whole group of people. When you say social justice, yeah, you're talking about, progressives. I think that's BS. That is totally not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about social justice, it's the Bodhisattva vow. It's universal. There is no one, no matter how bad we've been in our life, there is no one who is not worthy of compassion. Yeah. And so because I feel like if I talk to my police chief, who I think is a Trump supporter, I think so, and try to shove things down his, to try to get him to come around to my point of view, that's not going to work. So it's back to that stance I had. It's so goofy. When I saw that picture, I went, oh no, where did she find that? But it's like, okay, okay, that is the work of how to, it's like, here it is, Laura. When I first established this practice place, the Zen Center North Shore, it was Marblehead Zen Center before. The question I had was, how do I uphold something specific like Soto Zen Buddhism without falling into dogma and fundamentalism? So how do I uphold something like racial justice without falling into the notion that I know and you don't, and I just have to try to convince you? Because the fact of the matter is, I'm white, and I'm working with my privilege. I'm working with my own, prejudices all the time. So, but I can't be coy about it. I can't pretend. How do I take my place without thinking that I know it all? What is that confidence that we need to sustain us in a thoroughgoing way in this work?
Beautiful. Yeah. I just had this image of like, it feels like if you're, in honesty or something, like just as you just said, it feels like if you say, I'm working with my privilege, I'm working with my unconscious bias, and from that place I can sit right here and I can, kind of stand up. That was just the sense I got from you when you said that. Wow, beautiful. And I guess the hour is coming to a close. How can people find you? If people feel inspired to hear more of your teachings or to come practice with you, or
Please do. First of all, please do. And if that's overwhelming, the idea of practicing with me, just come hang out. Well, so it's Zen Center North Shore. You can find our website. We're on Facebook, and just Google Zen Center North Shore. And then, we're 100% on Zoom right now. And that won't be the case forever. But what might be forever is that we'll always have a Zoom component so that you don't have to travel to Beverly, Massachusetts to be with us. You can Zoom in. And so we'll, when we come back into physical practice, we'll do the hybrid thing. So just to know that you are welcome. Hay gente aquí que habla español, entonces si hay gente ahí que no habla inglés, por favor que vengan, que sean bienvenidos, okay? And then Esther speaks Kikuyu. I speak a little French. Awa speaks different languages. Andre's from Jamaica. Kitia is from Venezuela. So there's a lot of different. There's a lot of way to come in. Whoever you are, just. If you feel moved, just take a chance, take a little leap and reach out. It would be good to hear from you.
Oh, I feel like you'll have many, many people coming your way. I hope so. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. What a joy to see you, to have this time together. Thank you very much for this invitation. Take good care.
Thank you.